Okay, folks, let's kick off. Hello, Kailash. How are you doing? Welcome. It's great to have you. I would like to introduce you to our students and then hand over to you for today's session, Kailash. So folks, Kailash is a luminary in the tech ecosystem. Now he holds multiple impactful roles. So at Zerodha, which is India's largest stockbroker, Kailash is the CTO. Famously, this multi-billion dollar business is powered by a tech team that's a few dozen people. Kailash is also the founding director of FOSS United, which is India's leading free software organization. He's also involved with additional initiatives which enable and improve the social entrepreneurship sector in India. Now, I've had the opportunity to interact with him a few times, and I found him the most humble person, and he speaks wisdom in the plainest of words. I'm hoping so. Kailash, welcome to our small virtual gathering. I would like to invite you, students, if you can give a warm emoji welcome for Kailash. So let's take a few seconds. The Kailash, a warm welcome to you. So with that, Kailash, I know you've prepared a small topic for us. So I would like to invite you to talk to our students about the importance of tinkering and doing projects and how that in the long term builds skills and opens up opportunities. So with that, over to you, Kailash.
Thanks for that very gracious welcome, Anil. And tinkering is something I hold very close to my heart. And when I say tinkering, it could be tinkering with absolutely anything that interests you. So I identify myself as a tinkerer. I like tinkering with gadgets. I like tinkering with code. I like experimenting. And I find great joy in it. And I started out, I've never done BTech. I never did engineering. But even before I went to college, some 2 decades ago, I started out as a tinkerer. I figured out the idea of writing code to change behavior of software that you run on a computer. This was, I think, the year 2000. And for me personally, it really kicked off from there. It was a very different era back then. There wasn't a lot of material online to learn. There was no Google per se. There was no YouTube. There weren't millions of tutorials. The technology landscape looked very, very different. And yet there were havens of software tinkering, programming online. You'd learn by copy pasting stuff that others had posted on message boards and whatnot on the internet. You would copy and download it to your system. You'd tweak it. You'd achieve a different result and you'd post it back. So that's how I really got started out. Not with any particular aim, because I really enjoyed the act of copy pasting code, changing stuff, making computers do what you want to do. And then over many months, I realized that it's possible to. I realized that software as a thing was beginning to power businesses, was beginning to power a bunch of things, and I really got hooked, and I've never looked back. So I've been writing code for about close to 24 years now, as a hobbyist tinkerer then, and as a hobbyist tinkerer now. I mean, just before this call, I was working on my hobby project. There's a hobby project that I maintain. It's called ListMonk. It's an open source newsletter manager. So I was trying to commit a few pending features right before I joined this call an hour ago or so. So that act of tinkering, that act of exploring, the curiosity, and thankfully I feel very lucky that I have that innate curiosity. I really wish that curiosity upon everyone. That has really changed the trajectory of my life. I think I figured that it was possible to write software for others, offer your skills as a service, and get paid for the work when I was about 14 or 15 years old. It's called freelancing. I didn't know it was called freelancing, but I figured that there are people out there who need their problems solved. And many of these problems are technical problems. And if you have the ability to create technical solutions, you could make a living. So I started earning as a pre-teenager when I figured this out over dial-up internet, by happenstance. So then I kept on working I kept on working on stuff. I kept on building stuff. I kept on tinkering. And I think it was in the year 2003 or 4, again in my pre-teenage days, I wrote a piece of software called B Machine. It was a blogging platform. And I applied an open source license to it without really understanding what that really meant or what the license entailed. But I figured that I was copy pasting stuff from the internet to learn. So it was only natural and right for me to give back. And that project really took off. It happened to be one of the earliest blogging platforms on the internet. And that really opened up a whole new trajectory for me. And without even realizing, as a teenage hobbyist, I slowly gravitated towards exploring technology and software as a profession itself. As I said, I've never done a BTech or engineering, but I was always a tinkerer. I was writing software all throughout school, high school, all throughout college also. And thus really began my journey as a tinkerer. And a lot of these projects that I've worked on, and I still greatly enjoy working on these projects, have opened up all kinds of opportunities for me, completely unexpectedly. I didn't tinker with the goal of finding a job or finding business opportunities. Things like that really opened up in the process. When you build stuff, when you create stuff, when you create solutions for problems that others face, and that's really the keyword. That's one of my biggest lessons. We can write code for fun, absolutely fine. You can write software just for the sake of it, art for art's sake. That's also absolutely fine. You can also write software or tinker or build technology to solve problems, problems that you face and problems that others around you face. So I started by writing small little tech solutions with the code I was learning to solve problems that I was facing. I wanted to publish a blog. I couldn't find a good system out there. So I tried to build my own system, stuff like that. And at a point, I realized that most human problems are really shared. When I was struggling to publish a blog using a nice blogging platform, there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of others out there in the world who also had that same problem. So when I published my solution, the bit of software that I'd written over the internet, it suddenly found adoption. And that really opened my mind that if you create solutions for problems, for shared problems, and most problems in the world are shared, and you put it out there, the kind of pathways that emerge from that one act, the kind of people that you end up interacting with, thanks to the internet, people from all across the world, the kind of indirect and implicit opportunities that would open up is immense. It's luck also, but the more work you put in, the better quality you instill, the more you hone your work, the more stuff that you put out there, the bigger the opportunities, the bigger the probability of opportunities, no guarantees. So then, because I was a tinkerer, because I was in love with writing software, solving problems, my academic life went a certain way through the opportunities that my personal hobby work opened up. I was in the UK for 6 years. I did a BSc in computer science there on a partial scholarship. And again, the work that I was doing, the stuff that I was tinkering with, I ended up landing on a bigger opportunity and ended up doing a PhD in artificial intelligence, something that I had not planned at all to do in life in general. And on a full scholarship. These were things that I could never really have predicted or dreamed of. These were not even things that I really aimed for. I was just having fun, writing software, tinkering, building, learning every day. But these were things that emerged out of it through sheer coincidences, very unplanned. So over the last 2 decades, one of the biggest life lessons, learnings for me has been that the more positive works that you do, the more you use your skills to do small little positive changes. If you are a software engineer, doing engineering, tinkering, building solutions and putting it out there, the kind of pathways that open up are unimaginable and immense. For the last 11 years or so, I've been heading technology at Zerodha. Zerodha we are a large financial services stockbroking firm. And how Zerodha technology started out in 2012 is also an immense coincidence that again ties back to my own personal journey of tinkering. So I'd ended up in Bangalore in 2012 with no specific plans. I wasn't looking for a job. and I was making a modest living writing software for others online over the internet, freelancing, something that I had been doing since my pre-teenage. And I ended up in Bangalore because Bangalore is where technology happens. I heard there's good internet here. I just moved here. So somebody who remembered, a school senior of mine, who remembered that I used to tinker with computers back in the school, randomly after a decade of no contact, messaged me asking, "Do you still tinker with computers?" And I said, "Yes, that's what I do." And then they were in finance and they were in Bangalore, coincidentally. And I said, "I'm on it also in Bangalore." And then we met up and they had this idea to build a financial technology app. They were not a technologist. I immediately liked the idea because I figured that there was nothing happening in finance. And I was, as an engineer, as a tinkerer, I was eager to build new things, try out new things. So we met, and that's how I ended up, again, completely coincidentally, entering capital markets. And then I ended up meeting Nitin, who's the founder of Zerodha. Zerodha had started in 2010, like, in the same vicinity through this one particular change in trajectory. In 2013, we hit it off. 2013, we started Zerodha Tech as a tech company, and that's what we've been doing ever since. I mean, I'm not a finance person even today. I'm not really into capital markets, but that one interaction of somebody remembering through a decade that I personally was a tinkerer and that I liked tinkering with technology, and them sending that one message, us meeting up, it completely changed my timeline. And stuff entirely changed. Stuff that I was completely unexpected happened. And we put in, of course, a decade worth of intense hard work, right place, right time, got lucky. But the point is, somebody remembered that I was a tinkerer. Somebody remembered that I'd built useful things. And that was in their head for a decade. And then they messaged after a decade, and that changed everything. So if you don't do anything, if you don't tinker, if you just wait for opportunities to come your way, it might happen. Lottery also happens. It's 1 in a million chance. But if you do little things constantly, and if you enjoy those things, amazing. If you do little things, create little solutions that help people out there. We're talking about technology, that's our context here. Build software, build solutions. You put it out there. What sort of impact that will have out there in the world, in the chaotic open world, what sort of opportunities that will bring your way, completely unpredictable, but the odds go from 1 in a million to, it shrinks. And realistically, we know how many people in a country like India are aiming for a limited pool of opportunities. There are millions of engineers, and there are limited, really a fraction of opportunities. So how does one really compete? I'm not a fan of that word in this context, but we have to be realistic. That's the reality. How does one compete? You really have to be highly skilled, and your skills have to set you apart. Your skills, your attitude, your body of work, they have to set you apart from literally millions of other people in a country like India. So how do you do that? You constantly have to tinker. How else can you learn, right? You can't watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, reading programming books, etc. Yes, they all help, but nothing truly ever comes close to actually getting your hands dirty, tinkering, building, breaking, learning via trial and error. There's perhaps no engineer in the world, no software developer in the world who isn't self-taught. If everybody from the engineers who work at top engineering companies to even someone like John Carmack, everybody is self-taught. Excellent engineers have all learned to do stuff driven by their own curiosity and passion for learning and building stuff. So how do you create that passion? I don't really know that. I mean, like I said, I'm lucky that I have that spirit and curiosity and passion that drives me. But perhaps, tinkering will end up creating that spark. If you inherently don't have such passion or curiosity, maybe tinkering will help spark that curiosity. But unless you build constantly, non-stop with your own hands, unless you create things, unless you put things out there for others to use, things out there that will solve stuff for others, be useful to the society at large, opportunities are going to be rare and your odds are going to be low. The more you do, every project that you do, every bit of code that you push out there as software developers, as tinkerers, increases your odds of doing something more positive and landing upon better opportunities significantly. This has absolutely been my personal life lesson. And this I've seen with everyone around me. I'll give you another anecdote that anecdotal evidence for this. So in 2010, I worked on another hobby project, an open source dictionary, English Malayalam dictionary. I'm a Malayalam speaker. So I put it out there, open data, anybody could use, download the dictionary, build stuff on top of it. People could run research projects, etc. 2016, I came across an app on the Android App Store, a Malayalam dictionary that I figured was using the open data set that I'd published. And I was really impressed by the quality of that app. I had no idea who'd built it, but that's the beauty of, stuff, open source stuff on the internet. You build and push something, somebody else takes it and builds something else. So I reached out to that person. Turned out he was a hobbies developer from Kerala who'd found this dictionary I'd published, who downloaded that data set, open data set, and they built a really cool dictionary for Android. I was so impressed by it. I spoke to them. I convinced them to come join us. And he's been in the Zerodha tech team for the last 8 years. That one hobby project that person put out there, they didn't know me. They didn't even know Zerodha, but they figured it would have been a cool and useful thing to do. So they built on top of somebody else's work, right? I mean, they've been with me for 8 years now. So another really simple anecdote that I wanted to share to highlight how opportunities open up when you build stuff, when you do stuff and put it out there. So really, I mean, that's all I really have to say, that unless you build stuff with your own hands, unless you learn, unless you tinker and create, it's going to be difficult. The odds are going to be low. But every project that you do, it's your own bare hands, your odds of attaining something in life in general goes up significantly. So that's really the only life lesson that I'd like to share, that I find meaningful in sharing here. I think that's all I wanted to share, Anil.
Thanks, Kailash. I think the way I introduced, I think the promise is fulfilled, right? Very simple advice, but there's so much wisdom in that simple point, which is tinkering opens up so many paths. So folks, we have some questions that will come. I'll also invite some students to ask. Perhaps if we have time, we'll also open it up for open questions here. To kick that off, so Kailash, you called out the importance of tinkering, of just doing specifically projects. I had some planned questions, but I'll probably lead with one of these unplanned questions, which is a key part of how we run our first year education is invite students to do what's called capstone projects. And the way that is done is, hey, find an area of interest, an area of hobby. Think of what could be useful there and build it into it. Maybe if I can double down on that and ask you to follow up, if it is how do you find that project to work on?
Yeah.
Like maybe the complexity, the simplicity of it. How do you even go for yourself? How do you start off with that tinker?
I think every student that I've interacted with has pretty much asked me this exact question. How do you find projects? People ask me, how do you get started with open source? I think if you're looking for projects to work on, if you're looking for that ultimate thing that you really like to get started, it's going to be extremely difficult. I think looking for projects to work on is not it's not the right approach. But looking at problems to solve is the better approach. Forget software or technology in general, but look for problems that annoy you. If you can pick up pretty much any big piece of technology that you like, that you enjoy using, that you appreciate or respect out there, you can probably trace its origin back to somebody's frustration. If somebody really gets frustrated about how something works, they get pissed off, and they decide to fix it themselves. They try to build a solution themselves, and then that picks up and explodes and changes the world. Linux kernel's own operating system. Linux's own story is basically that it was born out of frustration with other stuff that existed out there. It started out as a hobby university project and literally changed the world. You can pick pretty much any piece of software out there, commercial or non-commercial, open source or not, and there's a high probability that it would have stemmed from someone's frustration. And frustrations are indicative of problems. That dictionary project that I was talking about, I built it because I was so frustrated by the lack of a good dictionary out there. I wanted to do English Malayalam lookups, and there wasn't a solution. It was a problem that bugged me forever, and one day I got really pissed off and I started working on it. So ListMonk event, another project that I mentioned earlier, got really pissed off with the solutions out there. Nothing was working, nothing was scaling, and one day I decided that enough is enough. I'll try and build this on my own, and that's how that happened. So I'd say don't look for projects, look for problems that bug you, or look for problems that you see are bugging people around you. And if that problem has a nice technical solution that will make your life or people's life easier, try and work on that. It doesn't have to be shiny, attractive. It can just be a simple solution, but that's how it really starts. If you go around GitHub looking for projects to work on, it's not going to work out. So look for problems. And if you think you have the ability and inclination and interest to solve that problem, that is how your project really starts.
Got it. So I guess students, if you're looking around and seeing someone frustrated, right, there's a capstone project there. Tagging along on the FAST theme, Kailash, you're a big supporter of free and open source software. In the few minutes that you've spoken, that came up repeatedly as well. You're one of the leaders of this organization called FAST United. So can you talk about what led to FAST United and what are the goals that it's trying to achieve?
FAST United's origin is also frustration. ERP Next, Rushabh, who created ERP Next. ERP Next is one of the biggest open source projects to come out of India. And we chat about this stuff, our shared interest for open source projects, the lack of momentum in the creation of great projects in India, humongous amounts of consumption. Every startup, every unicorn, governments, all of us, we all use open source technology, Firefox, Chromium, Linux, absolutely everything. But there are very few projects to have come out of India. So the creation versus consumption is very disproportionate. And we talk about this, personal frustration once in a while. So in 2020, we figured that we need to do something because we are so frustrated by the status quo. And that's how the foundation really happened. FAST United is a nonprofit foundation, and the goal is to really instill and inspire people to create and build open source stuff and put it out there to give back. We consume all our technology is pure consumption. We consume so much, and open source software generally across the globe is the fruit of passion of tinkerers and hobbies, people who build high quality stuff and put it out there that we take and consume. It's only right for us to give back. And as I've said the last 30 minutes, creating a solution and putting it out there, that's really the fundamental tenet of the open source philosophy or ideology. You create something and you put it out there and you let others use it, benefit from it, let others share it, you share it. So FAST United Foundation tries to do these things, inspire people to do these things in the Indian ecosystem.
Got it. So I think I'll pause on my direct questions. We have some questions from our students. So why don't I first invite Prasanna to come ahead. So Prasanna Venkatesh, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, hi Kailash. My question is, Zerodha being a successful trading app, how did it manage to provide users with unique features and when compared to banks, and how did it reach broader audience initially?
It took a very long time and we did it very slowly. Zerodha was started in 2010 as a financial services firm, not a technology company. And its differentiator was the pricing point. It was way cheaper than all the big bank offerings. But in the business of money, trust is everything. You can't just open a new company and a new brand and expect people to trust it with their hard-earned money. 2013 is when we started the tech company, the tech journey. And 2014 is when we really started releasing any sort of technology, user-facing technology out there. So between the creation of Zerodha as a stockbroker and the first bit of consumer technology that we released, that was already 4 years. And then Zerodha as a brand only really started picking up, and the growth was very gradual, very slow. We were not really in a hurry. We were patient. 2018-19 is when we really started picking up. By then, we'd been able to build end user trading platform. We had been able to incrementally improve it, build new features, build offerings that nobody else was doing. And then it really took off. So it took a very long time, almost like a decade, for Zerodha to become a large technology company that people liked and appreciated, that people used and trusted. And how did we manage to beat the big organizations and banks? I think there were classic stuff of disruption. The large organizations were very happy with the status quo. They had captive consumers who were paying high fees. They didn't bother building technology or doing any R&D. They weren't even interested. And we came out of nowhere. We focused on technology and products and stuff that was relevant. And over a period of time, consumers at the end of the day, people at the end of the day, they end up choosing quality over, substandard quality. So quality won over a long period of time. We never advertised or marketed. So it was all word of mouth. And if you need success via word of mouth, your stuff has to be high quality. You have to use something, like it so much that you tell your friends and family about it. So that's how Zerodha really grew. And our conviction as people who were building the business was that if we just focus on quality, product, services, everything, eventually people will like it enough to tell others. And that worked out over a decade.
Got it. Maybe following on the theme of Zerodha related questions, I'll also invite Anshul to please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey Kailash, I want to ask you to share a key lesson or piece of advice from your experience as the CTO of Zerodha that has been instrumental in shaping your company's success.
I'd say there isn't one incident or one decision that has made Zerodha. No company really is made on the back of one decision. It's a long series of tons of careful, tiny, and big collaborative decisions over a very long time. But we've always stuck to first principles. And all our decisions, product, tech, business, have been rooted in first principles. We've never done stuff just because somebody else is doing. People were advertising heavily. We never advertised. So I would say maybe on a philosophical level, resisting FOMO, the fear of missing out, and sticking to our first principle has been our biggest advantage. Whenever we've only done stuff based on common sense, we've only built features that we were absolutely sure that people would find true value in. We've never done gimmicks, cashback gimmicks or constant push notifications to entice people to come use our app. We've never done that on principle. So every single decision, numerous decisions that we've taken, they've been rooted in first principles. And this is one of the biggest questions that we ask ourselves. If we build something or if we do something, how much value does it bring to our end user, the customer? So our focus has always been that. And I'd say that focus, being rooted in first principles and having value for customer as a centerpiece for all our decision making, has shaped us, our culture, our products, our services, and the outcomes. So resisting FOMO and having the conviction to always stick to first principles.
Got it. Kailash, if I can ask on a question on this concept of a spark in computer science. You've spoken about how successful engineers And at some moment, that spark is lit, which kind of sets up the basis for a very long, joyful time as a technologist. So, how have your views evolved on this? And specifically, what do you think are some of the things that light this spark in people?
I think that's a tricky one. I can trace back perhaps the moment where that spark really happened for me. Early days, I didn't know what programming was. Like I said, very early days, and there were no peer groups. I didn't know what coding was. I didn't even know it was possible to build software. I just happened to have a personal computer and was just playing around with it, exploring, learning to type and whatnot. And like any other child, there were some games installed on the system. I figured, I was having fun playing those games. Then somehow I remember stumbling upon an INI file. An INI file is a plain text configuration file where you just like your YAML files, you have a bunch of configuration. So I remember the details are hazy, but changing some values in the configuration in an INI file for a game changed the behavior of the game. And then I started changing more stuff that I found in the configuration file, and I was able to make that game do things it wasn't supposed to do. And that is when it really occurred to me as a person, and as a young individual, that it is possible to make computers do what you want. That you don't just have to use stuff, you don't just have to use software, but it's possible to tweak software. And then that spark is what pushed me to explore more and more. First configuration files, then command line, then code itself, and then all kinds of different kinds of code, software, tech development. So it's very hard to pinpoint what will light that spark for an individual. It's entirely subjective, entirely dependent on their journey, their context. But again, if you don't do anything, if you just sit there waiting for a spark, that's not going to happen. For whatever reason, I edited those INI files. That was my spark, an early spark. For every person, it's going to be different, but you have to do something. You have to keep doing something. Now, how do you get that urge to do? I don't know. Like I said, I feel very lucky that I have that urge to constantly think and do something. So I wish that urge upon everyone.
Got it. Thanks, Kailash. So we've covered the technical side of Zerodha a bit, but you're also an entrepreneur. We've been there since the very early days. So I'll invite Kamakshi to come and ask a question on that lines.
Hi Kailash, we're so glad to have you over here. So my question is, how has your partnership with Nikhil Kamath evolved ever since the early days of Zerodha, and how do you both foster an entrepreneurial spirit within the organization?
It's simple, really. Human relationships. We like each other very much. We are really good friends, and thankfully, for whatever reason, our meeting itself was a sheer coincidence, like I said early on. But our philosophies aligned, our broad philosophies in life aligned. That stuff has to be built with common sense. That things have to be built, a business has to be built based on first principles. These philosophies, these innate views that had shaped us in our separate ways, they kind of aligned. And then we also had personal alignment, like I said, we like each other. So a bunch of these things aligned, which is why we've been able to work well together, build whatever we all collectively built over the years. And if you stick to common sense and objectivity, stuff gets easier. So within Zerodha, we don't really have one-sided decisions. I don't wake up one day and say that, oh, I have this great idea to build a great thing, let's build it. And I don't send that off as an order to the team to build. Any idea, every change that we have, anything that is significant, bunch of people who are involved, we sit together, we objectively debate. So it could be my idea, but somebody can say that idea is not going to work for so-and-so reason. So everything is really objective. So if that is your culture, that decision-making in an organization is based on facts and evidence and objective analysis, and not really based on people's ego, then over a period of time, you're just able to work really well with others. Just because I wanted something doesn't mean it gets done. I'd like everybody to be on board, and for that you have to be objective. So you don't get pissed off if your idea is not built, because our culture is based on objectivity and evidence, and that permeates the entirety of Zerodha. Our product tech teams, our business teams, CEO, CTO, all the CXOs, everyone. Anybody can propose anything, but everybody's on the same page that we will objectively analyze these ideas. So that's also really good for personal relationships, right? You're building businesses together, you're building stuff together. If you need alignment, it has to be based not really on one person's emotional requirements. It has to be based on facts. And if everybody accepts that, your relationship stays healthy, and the business also stays healthy. The organization stays healthy because you're building things based on facts and good analysis, and not on random whims, random ideas. So, I mean, that's really the gist of it. Just people who respect each other, hang out with each other, who have a shared culture. That's about it.
Thanks for sharing that, Kailash. So the future is on the mind of our students. I'll invite Swasti Mohanty to come in and ask their question.
Hey Kailash, my question is, what emerging technology do you see having the biggest impact on the industry in the next 5 years?
The elephant in the room is artificial intelligence stuff. All the GPT-4, OpenAI GPT breakthroughs in the last 12 months have been quite crazy. And every day I read of another breakthrough which is stunning. So without a doubt, I think in technology, the emergence of this new breed of artificial intelligence technologies is going to have the biggest impact on absolutely everything, including jobs, including job prospects. So what I was saying earlier, you really have to be at the top of your game. You really have to hone your skills. That's even more relevant today than ever, because I personally am witnessing AI technologies solve technical problems way faster than humans. Not everything. I mean, AI can't build high quality software yet. A lot of those corner cases, a lot of those areas, it started creeping in. Personally, I've practically stopped Googling technical questions. I no longer look at Stack Overflow. I would spend hours every day, just like all of us, searching, looking for technical solutions, debugging. Now I just ask GPT-4 and I get a really precise answer. It doesn't matter if it's a C++ stack trace or some obscure dump from somewhere else. It typically has the right answer explained to me within seconds. So I've used search engines to learn and be a tinkerer and to build whatever I've built over the last 2 decades, no longer. Now, that in itself is a huge shift for me as a person. I'm pretty sure it's happening to millions of people around the world. So the conventional way of learning, building technologies, writing software is changing fast, and you have to be cognizant of it if you want to be on top of your game.
Indeed, yeah, that is a proper elephant in the room. There's a gradient of answers to that question. Some see AI is doing everything except the problem-solving part. Some see AI is also taking on some of the problem-solving area. So we have to see how it plays out. Yeah. Folks, I've opened the Q&A module, so feel free to ask questions, and you can also upvote existing questions. We'll take the top 2 or 3. Meanwhile, I'll invite, I think, Aditya, you had a few questions called out. So why don't you unmute, but ask one only. Pick one and ask one.
Hi, Kailash. I am Aditya, first year BTech CSC student. It's wonderful to have you here, and your speech was really enlightening. My question for you is that, given the fast-paced evolution of financial technology and the increasing demand for seamless user experiences, how does Zerodha balance the adoption of new technologies with maintaining stability and security in its trading platforms? Are there any specific technological challenges or innovations that have significantly shaped Zerodha's technical strategy recently?
So I've written about this quite a bit on the Zerodha tech blog and my own personal blog. It's a challenge. Stuff changes every day. Every day there's a new JavaScript library. Every day there's a new breakthrough database. So as a business that handles a lot of risk, or any business that has a lot of stuff at stake, how do you figure out when to replace an existing technology with something new. And how do you make that decision that this new technology is really ideal? It's difficult, but I guess that's as much science as it is art, the art of making the right trade-off. Again, as I was saying earlier, I think it has to be, it absolutely has to be based on objective decision making. Imagine, so we use Postgres database to store financial records. Postgres is a rock solid database. And we store, I think, maybe 1 trillion records at this point, financial records, right? At a certain point, we felt that Postgres we were pushing it to its limits. So that was a cue for us to look for an alternate technology that was doing better. So typically, that's a really good signal. You know, something that has been working well starts slowing down, starts giving you problems. That's when you look outwards. That's always the first cue. There were a bunch of contenders. We evaluated each of them, shortlisted them based on their technical merits. We built small little prototypes, and then we ended up picking ClickHouse as the database for storing humongous amounts of data, and that transition has worked out really well. We didn't do it overnight. As I said, we built prototypes. We loaded billions of rows into ClickHouse and other databases to see with our own eyes and to experience it with our own bare hands which technologies fare better. So any technology choice has to be rooted in objective decisions. In 2017, when Google released Flutter, the mobile development framework, as an experimental project, there were no projects in the world, no production systems in the world that used Flutter. We spent a week understanding it, evaluating it, building a prototype, and took the decision, I think in 2018, to rewrite the Zerodha investment platforms in Flutter. That was a very risky decision. But even that risk was calculated. We'd figured that even if Google abandoned that project in its infancy, we would be confident of running it at least for 3-4 years. So even that risk we had as fail-safe. So you have to look at as many trade-offs as possible and make that choice as less wrong as possible. It's very difficult to have choices that are 100% right. So the goal has to be as less wrong as possible, and if something goes wrong, you have an exit hatch. So it's a principle. It's an art plus science of trade-off and decision making, and that's what we apply to all our technology choices. When is it time to replace something? When is it time to use something new? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What if it goes wrong? What do we do? Figure all of that out, and then we incorporate. And that's what we've been doing. And like I said, if I say let's switch to this database, our team isn't just going to switch to a database, switch to that particular database because it makes no sense. That's just an emotional appeal or response or an order. But that's not our culture. Anybody can suggest anything, but we do this objective analysis and we figure out all the risk capabilities and then make the switch. So it's a principle, it's an ongoing exercise, and that's how we make those trade-offs at Zerodha.
Thanks, Kailash, for that enlightening answer. There's one area we have not yet covered that is something you're very interested in, just social entrepreneurship. Specifically, you've invested a lot of time on initiatives, on figuring out how technology can have an impact in the social sector. So can you speak a bit about your interest in that, and what are the problem statements there? What are potential solutions?
I think so. We run the Rainmatter Foundation. That's a non-profit which focuses on climate change and environment. And climate change is one of the biggest looming crises that humanity is facing right now, a planetary crisis. And all our imagined small local personal problems or even societal problems are practically, they look meaningless in front of a planetary crisis. So we set up the foundation in 2020. And in the process, we started meeting organizations, nonprofits out there, social entrepreneurs out there who are doing very impactful work on the ground. People trying to solve water problems, soil problems, livelihood problems connected to this. People who are attempting to restore forests. And the more we interacted with these highly impactful organizations, the more I realized that on the one hand, our tech industry, the startup world, etc., it's exploded. There are multi-trillion dollar tech companies out there in the world. On the other hand, you have these organizations working extremely relevant, extremely important work on the ground on stuff to do with species, lives, soil, water, energy, absolutely everything, with zero resources practically, no money, and with no access to technology. So I was quite shocked by the disproportionate unavailability of technology in the social sector. We know that if you want to launch a startup tomorrow, we can go pick up a Postgres database, we can, pick up Vue.js, we can, whatever stack, we can immediately download stuff from the internet and start building high quality software. But in the social sector, like I said, people who do this impactful work, they are unaware of this. There are no techies in the social sector building technology for solving real world social problems, because everybody's in the industry, including me, because that's where all the action is, right? Tech, innovation, startups, financial success, it is all in the private industry. But the social sector, it's completely non-existent, because in the non-profit world, typically, there is no money. You can never attract tech talent from the private industry, from well-paying jobs into the social sector to work on impactful problems. So there was a big, stark realization for me. And after spending a lot of time there, after exploring, Anil, you and I have had conversations about this. I figured that it doesn't have to be that stark or bad. It's possible to reduce this massive tech gap in the social sector. It's it's an issue with awareness also. In 2024, or perhaps in the last 3-4 years, there have been this whole new class of low-code, no-code technologies, for instance, right? You can download and install stuff, and without having high technical acumen or skills, you can configure sophisticated software systems to solve problems via this whole low-code, no-code approach, right? So the social sector could also do this. A social sector organization can today pick up the best technology out there, download it from wherever, GitHub and whatnot, and use it to solve their problems. They don't need an army of developers or engineers. But they don't know. I mean, that knowledge, even that basic knowledge that it's possible to Google and find tech solutions, it doesn't exist there. And I felt that if at least it's possible to bridge that awareness gap, if the social sector starts being able to use technology to accelerate some of the immensely good work they're doing, the amount of positive social impact that will generate is insane. Imagine an org working in rural areas with, let's say, tribal population, working with marginalized communities. They are unable to record keep because they don't know how to set up, let's say, a simple record keeping solution. But if they were able to, imagine how much positive impact it would help, it would create in their own field of work, and hundreds of thousands of such organizations. So then it's been a personal project of mine to try and experiment and try and bridge this gap, to build the availability, build access to the immense corpus of high quality free and open source software and technologies that exist out there into the social sector to increase social impact, and to make technologists and techies on the other side aware of the social sector, so that perhaps they spend volunteering time where it helps them improve their own skills, technical skills. It helps them find projects. Maybe the solutions lie there. The problems that you're looking for. Maybe the problems lie there that are the origin of projects for many. And also through volunteering, increase social impact. So two different worlds, big gap in between. If you're able to bridge that gap somehow, at least a little bit, massive positive social impact across. So these are the thoughts that really have been running through my head over the last 4-5 years about this one particular thing in general, technology in the social sector.
Got it. And a small bit of something to share from the Kalvium side is we've been working with an organization called Samagra through a set of projects, the technology arm Samagra X, and we are initiating many of our students into some of those projects. So first of all, to build awareness and also to start contributing. This is from
that's very good to hear. Yeah.
Okay, folks. So with that, maybe we'll take a couple of top questions from the Q&A module. So I'm just going to sort them out. Kamakshi, do you want to come and ask your question, please?
Yeah, sure. So my question is, with the global rise of decentralized finance, how does Zerodha perceive the potential influence of decentralized finance on conventional financial services? And is the company considering any initiatives to incorporate decentralized technologies in its offerings? Thank you.
We've observed the space, but we are purely observers. We have no involvement in the space. Finance is heavily regulated. So Zerodha as an organization is regulated by SEBI. SEBI is like RBI for capital markets. We are regulated by CDSL, NSE, BSE, all kinds of organizations. Anything and everything that Zerodha does, or any other stockbroker does, or anything that a bank does, even what we show on our UI is regulated. So decentralized finance, DeFi schemes, technologies, or movement of money is not recognized by law or regulations in India or in most countries. So the regulated entities can't touch them because they are not legal per se. So unless these things become regulated and legal and they become a part of the economic and legal framework, nobody can touch those. No regulated organization like Zerodha can touch those things or have any offerings. So if these things ever become legally recognized, that's when we will start looking at it. But it doesn't, I don't think that's going to be the case for a very long time. Yeah.
Maybe I'll follow on that, Kailash. Are you able to say why you don't think it'll be there? It'll be okay for a long time?
So one of the things that really gives state, the state or government's immense power is the ability to control the economy, control currency. Highly centralized. The Indian rupee is highly centralized, right? It gives the Indian state immense amounts of power, just like US dollar gives the US sovereign nation immense amounts of power. If you just have decentralized financial technologies where people are able to bypass the central control that governments have and roll their own currencies, roll their own tokens, etc., that really is fundamentally incompatible with the idea of government and sovereign currencies, fiat currencies. So how does a government suddenly legalize or recognize all of this and lose their own power over their own central currency? I think it's a fundamental incompatibility, which I don't see being resolved anytime soon.
Got it. Maybe one last question, folks. Who is the next person I can invite in the list? Kshitij, you can come and ask your question.
So hello, Kailash. This is Kshitij. And my question is, recently the NVIDIA CEO stated the need to develop computing technology that eliminates the necessity for coding, where individuals are not required to write the code. So what are your thoughts on this?
So I found that very interesting. I think it has we have to be a bit philosophical about this. So the notion of writing code, the notion of programming was created for human beings to control computers to solve problems, right? Over a period of time, we've had n number of programming languages, n number of ways to code. Over a period of time, as programming has evolved, it's turned into fun, it's turned into art, it's turned into hobby. But ultimately, most of the software that is written in the world is written to solve problems on computers. Now, from a philosophical standpoint, if the only thing that you're looking for in a computer is giving solutions to the problems that you have, and if there's a magical AI system that it does that without the need for coding, that actually seems like the ultimate outcome that we've always wanted, right? Who wants to write code? You just want problems solved. You just want businesses to run, governments to run. Why even bother writing humongous amounts of code if an AI can do it? So from that perspective, if AIs are able to execute complex problem-solving actions on computers, there's really no need to code from that perspective. But that said, writing code, writing programs, programming in itself, it is now not just that, right? It's also art, it's also hobby. I write code because I really like it. And it's also a way of expressing yourself. People, if you give one task to 100 people, they'll solve the same task in 100 different ways. It's not deterministic, right? at a certain point, it's also, like I said, a way of expressing yourself, your creativity, your thoughts, your way of thinking, skills, etc. I think from that perspective, you can keep coding forever. It doesn't matter if AI is solving problems. You can always build creative things that are the ultimate form of your capabilities and your expression. So I think this whole notion of programming being dead is not necessarily going to happen. It's probably going to diverge into these two things. People will still write code, high quality stuff, build high quality software by hand, handcrafted stuff that a lot of other people will use and consume. And then there'll be AI that will produce a lot of software, code, etc., that will solve problems, because nobody really sees that as a form of creative expression, but just to get stuff done. And I think these things will coexist. Will that have an impact on jobs? I think yes, mostly an adverse impact, because most tech jobs out there in the world are not really about creative expression or pushing the envelope on innovation. It's about getting stuff done in business environments. So they'll coexist, but it's going to be very tricky and perhaps not very pretty.
Got it, Kailash. I think with that, we'll end our questions. There's one thing I didn't prep you for because we keep it as a surprise. It's a rapid fire questions. So are you ready, Kailash?
Yes.
Okay, Vim or Emacs?
Neither. I've tried both. I'm not a fan of either.
Android or iPhone?
Whatever works for you. I don't have a preference.
AWS or GCP?
AWS, any day.
Technology or entrepreneurship?
They're not mutually exclusive. You need both. To write good technology, you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit in you. You need both.
Dynamic language or static languages?
Static any day, but not a hater of dynamic languages. They serve their own purpose.
Microservices or monolithic architecture?
I don't believe in either. Common sense services. Some may be micro sometimes, some may be big sometimes, but splitting those into two camps has been a horrible disservice to programming in general.
AI, I think you've answered it, but AI, is it hype or real?
There's a lot of hype, but there's immense amounts of reality beneath the hype.
Open source or proprietary?
Open source any day, forever.
The last one, blockchain, game changer or fad?
After, I think, 14 years or 13 years of people claiming that blockchain is going to change the world every day, I don't see many changes. I can't remember the last time I saw a legit blockchain solution out there. Interesting technology, practically no practical applications in over a decade. So I'd say most of it just has been hype.
Got it. Thank you so much, Kailash. I hope you have had a fun session with us. We definitely have had a very fun session with you. I'll invite students to another emoji shower and share a lot of love for Kailash, a lot of the heart emojis, please. Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Kailash.
Anil. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.